My name is Loureiro. Welcome to my presentation for EDU503 Sports Law, presentation for Title IX Self-Audit, Prong 1. Title IX Compliance Framework suggests a four-step model for coming into compliance with the Title IX regulations. And those four steps include starting off by getting a gender equity committee together and a gender equity coordinator who would then set a timeline for how things are going to work within the self-audit process. The second step would be to complete the self-audit itself, and all the materials that you would find in the audit lead you step by step through what you would need to do. After your self-audit, then step number 3 would come into play, where you develop a strategy to make sure that you are coming into compliance with Title IX if you find that you aren't. And it also gives you a timetable for implementation of some things that you may need in order to become compliant with Title IX. And the last one is to monitor your execution of your strategic plan and do periodic reviews. And it's important that you set timetables in place with this so that it doesn't get swept under the carpet or you forget about it from year to year. Something that you can come back on and say, okay, it's time for us to do our self-audit again in reference to our compliance to Title IX. Effective accommodation and participation opportunities fall under Prong 1, Assessment of Substantial Proportionality. Prong number 1 of the three-prong test for Title IX asks the question, are there adequate opportunities for the underrepresented sex? Typically, the underrepresented sex means women. What we ask is, do women have equal opportunity for athletic participation at your school? I compiled this information from the Riverview Garden High School in St. Louis, Missouri, where I interviewed the athletic director and got information from the main office in regards to enrollment. The key issue for Prong 1 is stated as this: is the athletic participation rate of women substantially proportional to enrollment percentage of women? The first computation is the female enrollment percentage. You take the number of girls enrolled at the school and divide by the number of total students enrolled at the school. At our school, we have 488 girls enrolled and 960 total students, which gave us a percentage of 51% girls. Computation number 2 is the unduplicated female participation rate. You take the number of girls participating in one or more sports and divide by the total number of students participating in one or more sports. We have 116 girls and 236 total students participating in one or more sports, giving us a final result of 49% unduplicated female participation rate. The third computation is the duplicated female participation rate. For this specific computation, you are to count each student for every sport they play and not just for the sport in particular. You take the number of total participations by girls in all sports and divide by the number of total participations of boys and girls in all sports. We have 184 participations by girls and 382 total participations by boys and girls, giving us a 48% duplicated female participation rate. Computation number 4 of the Title IX self-audit is the unduplicated participation variance. In this instance, you are going to take number 1, which is the female enrollment percentage, and subtract number 2, which is the unduplicated female percentage rate, to give you a variance percentage. And in our instance, we ended up with a 2% variance. And the final computation for the self-audit is the duplicated participation variance. In this instance, you take number 1, female enrollment percentage, and you subtract number 3, duplicated female participation rate. And in this instance, we ended up with a 3% variance. As I did my research for this particular project, one of the things that really frustrated me, especially as a type of person who likes to have specific numbers and benchmarks, is this. There were no concrete numbers in regards to Prong 1. So one school could have a 2% variance, one school could have a 10% variance, and both could be considered acceptable. Well, how could that really be? We're looking at numbers here. So as I dug deeper, I realized that it's all very flexible in regards to prong number one as far as variance rates are concerned. And here's why. If a school has a smaller number of students, then it's going to be more difficult for them to get certain percentages when it comes to equal opportunities. So for example, if I have a 10% variance and another school has a 5% variance, if I try to get my smaller school's numbers down to 5%, that may be a difference of only 5 to 6 kids. You're not really going to be able to field a team with 5 or 6 kids, realistically. So the point is that you have something that is comparable for your school, not something that's going to necessarily be equivalent to the school next door to you or to a school that is smaller than you or bigger than you, but something that's going to be important for your school in regards to the numbers that you have and the concerns that you have at your particular school. There are a lot of things to take into consideration when you are looking at the self-audit process. There's a lot of accountability that's going to fall on those that are involved with athletics and extracurriculars at your school. Would people do it falsely and provide false information? Possibly, but I think it's important that we hold professionals accountable for what it is that they're putting out there for their district. It's really up to the Board of Education and the central office to request the self-audits because the state or the federal government are not really requiring that to happen at this point. It's up to the athletic administrator to structure the self-audit process, and I would suggest using the recommended 4-step process for this that is shown in the framework. It's easy, it gives you step-by-step instructions on what to do, and that just makes your job a little bit easier as the athletic director. So what do these numbers mean and how are they relevant for our school? In the self-audit, they made it clear that anything under 5% seemed to be acceptable when it came to litigation and people looking for a good participation variance. And I think that the numbers of 2 and 3% for unduplicated and duplicated participation variances are pretty good. And it's important that we understand that when I looked at this, it is meeting the needs of our students and what they are looking for in regards to athletics and making sure that there's equal opportunity for both male and female athletes. Once you've completed the self-audit, it's important that you review it and look and see where you need improvement, where you're doing well, and where you're doing better than well. And in this case, in prong one, it seems as though our school is doing a good job of providing those opportunities. So where do we go from here? We have some special circumstances in our district because we were recently unaccredited and have recently regained our accreditation back. So how does that affect our athletic department? As far as our department is concerned, we are expecting an influx of students next year based on the numbers that the central office has been quoting to us, which could be in the hundreds. You can imagine that if you have an influx of several hundred students coming back to your school, that many of them are going to be interested in extracurricular activities, specifically in the athletic department. So it's important that we are prepared for this in the incoming years and that we are providing adequate participation opportunities for those students that come back. Well, what happens if we are not providing those opportunities? We will figure that out as we continue to do our self-audit. One of the easiest ways to provide opportunities for students without having to add particular sports back into your program is to add lower levels or more levels. So for example, if you simply have a varsity team, add the JV team in, add a C team or a freshman team in so that you can give more opportunities to more students. I know a lot of schools are going to C teams in regards to participation as opposed to freshman teams because that way you can offer more participation at other levels rather than just freshmen. You could play freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors on a C team and still provide that opportunity for competition for students. Regardless of what their abilities are, you still have that participation there. That concludes my presentation for EDU503 in regards to Prong 1 of Title IX Self-Audit.